Hi, my name is Elara, and here is my story.
I woke up to the sound of breaking glass. My heart jumped into my throat before I even realized it was coming from my own apartment. I bolted out of bed, only to see the faint shadow of someone vanishing through the cracked window. My necklace gone, and with it, a piece of my past I never wanted to lose. I knew immediately it wasn't random. Someone I trusted had crossed the line. It had been a perfectly ordinary Tuesday until that moment. The sun spilling over my coffee cup. The subtle hum of the city, everything felt too calm for the storm that was about to hit. I replayed every interaction, every small smile and casual compliment from the people I called friends. One of them had lied to me, and I didn't know who. I tried calling her first, the one person I thought I could trust with everything, Maya. No answer. My gut tightened. She'd been acting different lately, distant, distracted, careful with her words. I remember the way she avoided my eyes last week, and I brushed it off as stress. Now, it all made sense. Or at least, it was starting to. I decided to check my emails, hoping for some clue, some trail of breadcrumbs. And there it was. A message sent to my private account, deleted but traceable, revealing a plan that cut me deeper than a knife. Someone I loved, someone I counted on, had sold me out for money. The betrayal wasn't abstract. It was vivid, sharp, crushing. I could feel my pulse hammering in my ears as I followed the digital trail. I traced the transactions, the messages, every carefully disguised hint. Each step pulled me further into a web I didn't know existed. The ordinary life I'd taken for granted was gone, replaced by paranoia, rage, and a cold, calculating desire for justice. I realized then that there was no going back. By the time night fell, I had a plan. I would confront them, but not blindly. I needed leverage. Proof, something that would hit them where it hurt. I became obsessed, checking every detail, memorizing every routine, learning everything I could about my betrayer. Sleep became a stranger. Coffee was a lifeline. The transformation began quietly, almost imperceptibly. Fear and grief morphed into strategy and determination. I followed her to a cafe. The next morning, heart racing beneath my calm exterior. She didn't see me at first. Absorbed in her phone, I watched her sip her coffee, laugh softly at a message, and my stomach twisted. I wanted to scream, to make her feel the betrayal she'd inflicted on me. But I didn't. I waited. Patience, I reminded myself, was the sharpest weapon. When I finally confronted her, it was with the calmness of someone who had rehearsed every word in the mirror, who had planned this down to the smallest detail. Why, I asked, not angrily, not desperately, just cold, quiet, deadly precise. She froze, then lied again. The words slid off her tongue like venom I had swallowed too many times before. I realized I was stronger now, not in spite of the pain, but because of it. I couldn't stop thinking about revenge, but it had to be clever, not physical, not messy, but something that would leave her reeling. I started planting subtle seeds, spreading carefully constructed rumors, exposing small cracks in her professional and personal life. Every step was measured, every reaction calculated. Watching her flounder in confusion was intoxicating, but it was more than revenge. It was reclamation of myself, my dignity, my power. Days turned into nights. I began keeping meticulous notes, recording every slip, every faint expression of guilt, every lie. It was exhausting, but exhilarating. I felt like I was shedding my old skin, layer by layer, and beneath it was someone sharper, braver, smarter than I had ever been. She had underestimated me, and that miscalculation would be her undoing. Then came the night of the confrontation that would change everything. I had invited her to what I framed as a casual dinner, the kind where no one suspects betrayal. The city lights glimmered outside the restaurant windows. Indifferent to the storm brewing within me, she smiled when she saw me, and my stomach twisted with the memory of her false warmth. I returned the smile, calm, collected, lethal in its subtlety. I revealed everything slowly, savoring the tension, the rising panic that flickered across her eyes. Every accusation was precise, every proof undeniable. I watched the color drain from her face, her carefully constructed world, unraveling in a few simple sentences, and when she tried to talk, to twist the narrative, I didn't falter. I let her speak, then dismantled every excuse, every lie, with an ease that shocked even me. In that moment, I realized the transformation was complete. I wasn't the person who had slept peacefully in her apartment just days ago. I was someone else entirely, someone capable of seeing betrayal, feeling the sting, and turning it into strength. And it felt good. Terribly, horribly, wonderfully good. But the story didn't end there. As she left, defeated, I felt a pang of unexpected emotion. I had sought revenge, yes, but also justice, and in the process, I had confronted my own vulnerabilities. My tears that night weren't for her, they were for me. For the girl who had trusted blindly, who had been naive, who had been hurt. And now, I was free, stronger, wiser, and ready for whatever came next. I walked home under the pale light of the moon, my steps lighter than they had been in weeks. The city hummed around me, alive, vibrant, indifferent. And I realized that my life, my real life, was only beginning. Betrayal had been the spark, but I was the fire. I would never let anyone dim me again. Not her, not him, not anyone. And yet, even as I embraced my newfound power, my thoughts flickered to him, the one who had watched silently, the one who had been there all along, the one who understood. There was tension in that realization, a pull that made my chest ache. I didn't know if I was ready for it, but I knew this story, my story, was far from over. The days after the confrontation were strangely quiet, too quiet. I kept replaying every moment in my mind, every word, every look, wondering if I had truly dismantled her hold over me or if she was just lying in wait. Fear flickered at the edges of my thoughts, but this time it didn't control me. I controlled it. I had learned that much. Then he appeared, not in a dramatic, heroic entrance, but casually, almost as if he belonged there all along. The sight of him made my chest tighten. He looked at me differently now, not with pity, not with judgment, but with curiosity, with desire, and maybe, just maybe, with respect. It was a dangerous combination, one that made my pulse race and my mind spin with possibilities I wasn't ready to name. We didn't speak for a moment, just watched each other, the silence thick with unspoken questions. Finally, he said, "You've changed." Not as a compliment, not as an observation, but as a truth I had earned. I realized then that the transformation I had undergone wasn't just about revenge or justice, it was about me, reclaiming myself in every sense. And he had noticed. The tension between us was palpable, a dangerous, magnetic pull that made every word feel heavier. And yet, I didn't let it distract me. Not entirely. I had unfinished business, emotions still raw, and a life to rebuild. But the thought of him lingered in every decision I made, like a shadow that refused to leave, a constant reminder that vulnerability could be dangerous and thrilling. Days turned into weeks, and life began to take on a rhythm again. I had dismantled her world, yes, but the city still hummed with indifference. I began to notice the little things, the sunlight catching on the pavement, the way strangers smiled without knowing the battles I had fought. Each moment felt sharper, more alive, as if surviving betrayal had given me senses I never had before. And then, the twist came. She reached out, not with apology, not with remorse, but with a desperate, frantic attempt to regain what she had lost. I read her message carefully, savoring the irony. She thought she could manipulate me, bend me to her will again, But she had forgotten something crucial. I wasn't the same person. I was someone who had tasted betrayal, had survived it, and had come out stronger. I decided to meet her one last time. Not to fight, not to plead, not to reclaim anything, but to close the chapter properly. The cafe was empty, shadows stretching long across the floors, and she looked as if she might finally understand the consequences of her actions. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The weight of my calm gaze, the steel behind my words, was enough. You underestimated me, I said softly, and that was your mistake. Don't ever forget it. She flinched, and I left. No drama, no theatrics. Just the quiet satisfaction of knowing that justice, clever and precise, had been served. And more importantly, that I had survived, had thrived, and had claimed my power back. Walking home that night, the city lights flickering like distant stars, I felt a strange peace. The fire of rage that had fueled me was now tempered by clarity. I had confronted betrayal, embraced my vulnerabilities, and emerged victorious. And in that victory, I found something unexpected freedom, not just from her, but from fear, doubt, and hesitation. And then there was him, waiting just across the street, his eyes reflecting the glow of the city. No words were necessary. I felt the pull of him, the magnetic tension that had always existed. Stronger now because I was no longer the girl who needed saving. I was the woman who could choose, who could command, who could feel without fear. We walked together, side by side, and for the first time in weeks, I laughed, not the small, nervous laugh of the betrayed, but a full, genuine laugh of someone who had reclaimed her life. And as we talked, the city humming around us, I realized that the story wasn't just about betrayal and revenge. It was about transformation, about taking the pain, twisting it into power, and learning that the world doesn't break you unless you let it. I caught his hand, a subtle but deliberate touch, and felt a spark of something I hadn't dared to feel before. Hope. A possibility that wasn't built on dependence or fear, but on mutual respect and unspoken understanding. It was thrilling, terrifying, and beautiful all at once, and I knew that whatever came next, I was ready. The final twist came quietly, almost as if the universe had been waiting to reward me for every hard-earned lesson. My betrayer's downfall became public, subtle, unavoidable, perfectly timed. The consequences were real, believable, and entirely of her own making. She had tried to play with people's lives, and the game had turned back on her. Watching it unfold from a distance, I felt no gloating, just confirmation. Justice, clever and undeniable, had its day. And yet, the real victory was internal. I had faced betrayal, navigated it with strategy and courage, and emerged not just intact, but empowered. I had learned the value of patience, of intelligence, of self-respect. I had learned that revenge could be clever, but the real triumph was in transformation. As I stood by my apartment window, that night, the city stretching endlessly below me, I felt a deep, satisfying calm. The danger, the heartbreak, the rage, all of it had forged me into someone new. I was no longer the girl who trusted blindly. I was the woman who controlled her own story. And as he came to stand beside me, I knew that the next chapter, whatever it held, would be mine to write. Because I had survived. Because I had conquered. Because betrayal had sparked the fire. And I had become the flame. And in that fire, I found something even more precious than revenge myself.